Thanks for joining us for Politics 401, The Math of Winning. I'm Emily Fort with the Homeschool Freedom Coalition, and if you're just joining us, we've discussed what politics is, the different paths to power, and why the indirect path of educating people is not a winning strategy. Today, I'm going to talk about the math of winning, which will lead us to the second indirect path, which is the one the Homeschool Freedom Coalition has chosen, and which I am honored and grateful for the opportunity to help them pursue. So I think we need to break down the vote. And I mentioned in the last video, we don't need 51% of the population to agree with us, or if we wait for that, we're always going to lose. But I want to break down why that is. Do we really need 51% of the population to agree with us? And I would say right on the outset, no, not even close. In reality, it's more like 60% because kids, aliens, felons, dead people can't vote. That's why Arizona has a higher turnout. They have the same population as other states, but they have fewer children, right? And fewer felons. A lot of just law-abiding little old folks, right? That's also why cities have lower turnout. They have more felons, they have more illegals, and they have more kids, okay, than a place like Arizona. So the basic voter turnout is, 60% max of people in our society can vote. So let's say we focus on that 60%. Do we need all of them? No, because not all of them are registered to vote. And when they're not registered, they don't care. So for our purposes, with our budget and time limitations, we have to think that it's a waste of time trying to register them. We think it's a waste of time trying to make new voters. Now, I just want to say at the outset, if we were a presidential campaign or we're appealing to a previously unregistered voting bloc and had a candidate with some star power, that's one thing. But most homeschoolers are already pretty civic-minded, and finding and registering new voters who care about our topic is too expensive for our game right now, okay? So that means we can narrow the pool again, because only about 40% of people are even registered to vote in the first place. So if you keep following this math, we really only need just 20% plus one, right? No, because not everyone turns out to vote. And depending on the type of election you're dealing with, voter turnout can actually be tiny, tiny, tiny. So now we're down to maybe 24% of the people are voting, which means we only need 12% plus one, right? That's still wrong because many of the voters are just Team R or Team D voters. They don't care about issues. They don't care about candidates. They're just going to check the box at the bottom of the ballot, vote a straight ticket. So if it's not 12%, what is the real number? The grand total needed to swing an actual election is usually about 3% plus one. That instead of 60%, realistically, we need 3%. And with the tools and tactics we have here at the Homeschool Freedom Coalition, we can easily change the mind of 3% of the voters. And essentially, that's it. That's how the country is run. That's how elections are won. They're run by the 3%. Okay, so let's take an example and apply it, and you'll see how true this is, okay? Let's look at the radical farthest fringe of the Green New Deal environmental movement, okay? These folks make up a tiny fraction of our population. Maybe just 3 or 4% of Americans actually believe the world's going to end in 10 years if we don't ban gas stoves, okay? But every single one of them votes, okay? And that is on purpose. They're all adults. They're registered to vote. They're politically active. They're deeply committed to this single issue. Okay, so they're the perfect, motivated, mobilized voting bloc. They often have no kids to raise, so they've got extra time. They often have just college degrees, more disposable income, and they have this deep sense of a moral mission, which means they spend their time and money more on politics than on, they might do entertainment or fun or vacations. So this multiplies their effect. They show up at every hearing, every town hall, every protest. They flood legislators with calls. They get their people appointed to committees. They are very outsized in their impact. And now, because of that tiny and relentless group, we have entire federal departments writing climate policy that nobody voted for. That's how they win, okay? That's how everybody wins, is you have to be politically feared. Unless you are politically feared, you will not be politically respected. And that is what, when you see bureaucrats writing laws to please them, and when you see politicians pandering to them, that's not failure, that's proof of their power. The radical Green New Deal crowd are the 3% that throw elections. We need to find our 3%. Homeschooling is growing. We're 6% of students in the country, but are those parents all mobilized and ready to get going fighting for homeschooling? See, the goal isn't majority approval, it's discipline. We need our group to be the 3% that's willing to fight politically, and we need to mobilize them. And we need to make the ruling class, that's legislators, lobbyists, whoever, afraid to cross them. Suddenly, we're finally playing ball. Instead of every homeschooler in the state needing to drive to the Capitol with a pie, God bless them, in hopes that the legislature will see that we're nice people and not want to regulate us. Instead of that situation, you'll have legislators meeting in back offices saying, listen, guys, I'd love to vote for this bill to regulate homeschooling, but I'd lose my next election because those homeschoolers are powerful and they're relentless. So hopefully this video explains some of that for you. There's a lot more to it, a lot more coming. We have more videos coming about how we're going to get involved and what it's going to look like. But I want people to realize how critical it is that every homeschooler be mobilized, educated about what's happening in their state capital. This is all done very, very quickly. It's often done under, in closed meetings, behind the cloak of darkness at 2 a.m, this sort of stuff. We have to get ahead of that. We have to find our 3%. We hope that you're part of it. We hope that you'll join the Homeschool Freedom Coalition, sign up for our email alerts, donate to help us mobilize that 3%, help us find and mobilize and turn this into a powerful political fighting force so that homeschooling is free for our children and grandchildren to continue to educate their children outside of the government-controlled education system. So I end every video with stay free, stay the course, and I really mean it.